Hi everybody, welcome to this tutorial on how to animate on paper. In this tutorial we're going to go over how to make your own flipbook from scratch. The materials you're going to need today are a pencil, some kind of eraser, the paper you're going to use. In this case, I found some flashcards from a Japanese bookstore. So if you can find something like this, I think this will be perfect. If you don't have those, you can also use 3x5 cards. These ones are available everywhere. What I would recommend doing, you could use them whole just like this, or you could do something to prepare them for a flipbook, and we'll go over that later. And the last thing you're going to need is a light box of some sort. This is my light box that I use for animating on paper. You can see I've got my animation peg bar down here, and then I've got my animation paper with animation holes. I could just put that on the bar just like that, and I can flip and do my paper animation that way. If you'd like to know how to animate on paper the traditional way, let me know in the comments below. So this light box, I have a switch back here that I can turn on. And the reason that's useful is because when I draw something on my first frame, it allows me to see what my previous frame was. So you can see right now I can't really tell what my last drawing was, but as soon as I turn on my light box, I can see a ghost image of my drawing before. So this is really important for doing animation. This way I can trace over the drawing, maybe squash it down a little bit like this. This is my drawing number 2. So now, if I take these and I arrange them in order, now I can flip through these 2 pages and get a sense of animation. So the faster I flip it, the more it looks like he's moving around just like that. So that's why a light box is useful. I got this one on eBay for about 20 bucks. Another thing that you could try to do is to take just a regular phone, look up or download an image of just pure white, open it up in your image viewing app, set the brightness on your phone all the way to maximum, and zoom in on this white image. And you can kind of use it as a light box. You can see without the light box, I can't see my previous frame, but on top of the light box, it's not as nice, but I still can see my previous frame this way. So if you don't have a light box, there are other options you can do. You just have to be kind of creative. Another thing people do is they animate on a window on a really sunny day. The reason I don't like doing this is also if you're touching your phone and stuff, it's really easy to move things around, accidentally tap on things, or your phone might turn off after a time and you have to keep turning it on. It's just not as convenient, but it does work. You do get something you can work with to make a flipbook out of. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention, the last thing that I would recommend for a flipbook is a way to hold it together. So I like using these binder clips. I used these binder clips when I was a kid, and they're super great for making flipbooks. So after your flipbook's all done, you just stack it all together, put a binder clip on it, just like that, and it's a perfect flipbook, just like that. So I love these binder clips. We're going to use this one later. But yeah, those are the only things we're going to need, is paper, pencil, an eraser, a binder clip, and a light box. So I mentioned before that you can use these 3x5 note cards for doing flipbooks, but we're going to cut these up into smaller segments so they make better flipbooks. But if you're not doing this step, feel free to skip ahead to when we're actually drawing our first frame. If you can't find a pack of flashcards like this, what we can do with these 3x5 cards is take a ruler, and for this part I like to use a ruler that has millimeters on it just because I find it a little bit more accurate and easier to divide. So what we want to do is we want to take our ruler, measure it up, so we can either divide this into thirds, which would give us about that size, which I think is a much better size, but it's a little harder to divide. So another thing you could do is just divide half and then half again. And the math on that is easier, but you get much thinner little segments to animate a flipbook with. I think it'll work fine either way, whichever way you want to do, but I'm going to go by thirds. All right, so step number 1, we want to take our ruler and line it up on the millimeter side and count up how many millimeters it is. So this is 120, 25, about 126 millimeters. So 126 millimeters divided by 3 gets us 42. So we'll go down to 4, add 2 millimeters, put a mark there. We'll go from that mark, do the same thing, go down to 4, add 2 millimeters, and do a mark there. And that should, if we do it one more time, we should see that we have 42 millimeters left over. So that should be perfectly divided into 3 at these parts. To make a perfectly even line, we want to do those same measurements on the other side as well. So flip it over, measure 42 millimeters again, and now we just connect up these lines. If you didn't want these marks appearing on your flipbook, you could make these marks on this side right here with all the lines on it. That way you don't get these marks showing on this side. But then once you have your lines, then you just cut them out, set them aside, and there we go. Now we've got pages of a flipbook ready to go. So this is probably not enough to get started with flipbooking. When you don't have enough pages, it makes it really hard to flip. It's really tough to make a short flipbook like this. I would recommend doing at least 20 to maybe 50 of these little pages, but you can see the perfect size that this is. But since we have something that's already been created, it should be a lot easier for us. So let's get on to drawing our first animation frame. All right, so now that we've got our animation paper ready to go, let's open it up. And here's our stack of paper that we're going to be working with. You can see when I tamp it down and flip it, flips super nicely. This is going to make really good flipbook paper. So let's draw our first animation frame. It literally doesn't matter. It's whatever you want to draw. Being the traditionalist that I am, we're going to do a bouncing ball. So one thing to note about flipbooks is when you're flipping a flipbook, you're going to be holding it with your thumb on this side right here, right? So when you're flipping through it, really the only parts you're going to be seeing is about on this second third of the flipbook. So you don't want to be drawing details over here where the person's going to be holding it, right? So all of your animation should be happening about in this 2/3 section over here. So I'm going to go ahead and write number 1 on the top right corner. You could also do it on the top left if you don't want your numbers showing, but I kind of like having the numbers showing. And I'm just going to draw my first bouncing ball. So we'll just have it be a circle on the top left, just like that. Easy peasy. Let's grab another piece of animation paper, turn on our light box so we can see our previous frame. My plan for this is I'm going to have it bounce once and then bounce off to the side just like that. And actually, what we could do is use this as our reference guide. I could keep that underneath my frames just like that, and then grab another piece of paper, put it on top just like this. And whenever you put another paper on top, you always want to tamp it down one side, then the other, just to make sure it perfectly lines up. So this is frame number 2. We're just going to follow that arrow that we can see and just have the ball slightly move off from its first position, just like that. And it's getting a little bit hard to see. So for example, if I were to take another piece of paper here, put it on top, it's starting to get really hard to see. I can still kind of see what I need to be doing, but just to make it easier on myself, I'm going to get rid of my drawing number 1. That one's finished. We're not using it anymore. So now we're only referencing drawing number 2. This is drawing number 3. We're going to have it move even further past that path right there. And gradually we're going to have it speed up, stretch out right before it hits the ground. That's going to be our first movement here. So 3 looks good. We're going to put 2 away here. This is why I like numbering them, because I'm not going to worry about keeping them in order. I'm just going to keep my flow going. I'm not going to worry about keeping my finished drawings in order. We can organize that later. Right now, I just want to focus on the drawing part of this and just get my character or my ball moving in the direction I want it to move, making sure I do my number first. So the ball's starting to speed up, right? So instead of having it really close to this drawing, I'm going to do it a little bit further away. So it's right about there, and it's starting to stretch out. And then we've got drawing number 5. So here, I really want it having going a lot farther and really starting to stretch out, just like that. So when things stretch, they should stay the same volume. It shouldn't shrink one way or the other. We're trying to keep the same consistent volume. And then drawing number 6 is going to be my last stretched out drawing right before it hits the ground. So the next frame is where it's hitting the ground, right? You can see this is the end of my little arrow right there. This is so fun. This is really, really fun. So once it hits the ground, it's going to squash, right? Instead of stretching out, it's going to squash down on the ground. Something like that. I drew it a little bit big, so let me clean that up a little bit. This is drawing number 7. One thing about this squash drawing that I see a lot of beginning animators do, let me just to demonstrate. So here's our stretched drawing, and here's our squash drawing, where it's squashing on the floor, right? What I see a lot of beginning animators do when they're drawing stretching and squashing is they'll draw a squash that looks kind of like this, almost like a flat tire sort of look to it. This is not the way I would recommend drawing a squash drawing. I don't like telling people don't draw this way, but if you draw a squash drawing that looks like this instead of just a squashed out regular circle like that, if you have it looking like this drawing right here, it'll look like it's sticking to the floor rather than bouncing up with any springiness. Just something to be aware when you're doing your bouncing ball. All right, and then for drawing number 8, when it springs back to life after it's bounced off the floor, you could either have it go back to its regular shape, or I'm gonna have it go back into a stretch drawing. I like the way that looks typically. And again, we're following the arrow that's going this way off to the edge of the screen. And here we can have it return back to its original shape. So I'm just gonna lightly indicate where I want it to be with my pencil here. So one thing that happens happens when you're animating this way, this is called straight ahead, where we just go from one to the end of our animation without drawing the key poses beforehand. This is called straight ahead animation. Doing your keyframes first is called pose to pose. So one issue that can have when you're doing straight ahead animation is you can lose volume. Like right now, I have no idea what size this circle's meant to be, and a really helpful technique both in paper animation and digital animation is called shift and trace. So here's our drawing number 1. This is like our main drawing. This is our main keyframe drawing. So instead of taking my drawing number 1, since it's paper, it's super easy for us to just take this drawing and move it underneath our other drawing until it lines up with what we're trying to trace. This is a super simple example with the bouncing ball, but you can imagine how useful this technique is for more complex characters. So yeah, shift and trace, very, very useful. All right, so let's continue having this ball bounce off screen. This is my drawing number 10. Drawing 11 is just about halfway off the screen at this point. Drawing number 12, you could just barely see it. This will be a funny frame because it's like, there's no drawing there, but these frames are important too. Another important frame, just a blank one. I'm calling that done because it's completely off the screen, right? You wouldn't see it. So with that done, let's put these in order. So if you were stacking it the way I was, it'll be in a backwards order, right? Your last drawing will be on top and your first drawing will be on the bottom. So an easy way to put these in order is just take your stack and just take the top one and put it down onto a pile just like that. And besides numbering your drawings for this reason, it's also useful in case like an earthquake happens or, you know, a breeze blows all your papers all over the place. Anything can happen. So once they're all in order, we want to tamp it down, get it all even just like that. And then one thing with flipbooks, this might be a little bit difficult to demonstrate, but right now we've got a straight horizontal stack. But what I like to do for my flipbooks is put it at a bit of an angle like that so that it creates sort of a slope that your thumb can glide across when you're doing your flipping. So instead of tamping it straight up and down like that, I like to tamp it at more away from me, sort of like at that sort of angle. And you should get more of an angled slope to your flipbook. And then we take our little binder clip just like this, and now we flip through it, and we've got our bouncing ball animation. Pretty cool. One thing I always liked to do when I was making flipbooks is to make like a little title card on top so I could take our reference drawing that we were doing here, call it the bouncing ball. And it might be good to put a date, you know, or a year, 2024. So if hopefully when I'm still doing animation 10, 20, 50 years later, I can look back on this and be like, wow, humble beginnings. Tamp it like that, put our binder clip on it just like that, and there we go. Finished flipbook. So you can see, because it's not very many frames, this is only 13 frames, it's a little bit difficult for me to flip. The shorter your animation is, the harder it's going to be to flip. So let's make an animation that's a little bit longer than this one. Alright, so now that we know how to animate using a flipbook, let's make something a bit longer, more complicated. We're just gonna have fun with this one. I'm gonna do something in the style of how I started doing animation. And this is how I got started. When I was first learning to animate, I was lucky enough to have a drawing desk where it actually had a light table built into it. It was super cool, and I just kind of randomly found out through reading a book how animation worked. You did it by tracing previous drawings, and you do that enough, and eventually the drawings will move. Well, my mom had a bunch of business cards, and what I would do is I'd animate on the back of her business cards because they were blank. So I would animate just like this. I'd start out with a little character, I'd make him start to move. Oftentimes I wouldn't know exactly what it was I wanted him to do. I would just start to move him little by little, and eventually I'd have a whole flipbook. And I guess that's where I got started animating. I would actually sell them for like $5 a piece on the playground, and I still have some. I'll show some of them off to you at the end of this video just for fun. But yeah, I think I'm gonna start with this guy just starting to bend down. We'll just kind of just animate straight ahead and just see what happens. I'm doing this animation and even I don't know what's gonna happen in it, so we'll see what happens. All right, so I think that should be good. This was kind of a stream of consciousness thing. This was a lot of fun, but now we need to do the task of reversing it. So this is about how thick I've gotten it. This is 45 drawings. So yeah, let's reverse it. Another reason it's good to number your frames. I noticed some of these are out of order. All right, so let's flip through it, see how it looks. Again, tamp it down away from you so it's a little bit angled, easier to flip. So if you're flipping through it and some parts feel a little bit fast, like that zoom up that he's doing right here, I think could probably use one more frame. Maybe one in between these two. That's easy enough to do. All you need to do is just grab those two frames. So 8 and 9, we want to do one in between, right? So put them on top of each other. and call it something like 8.1 or 8.5 or 8A, 8B, something like that. I'll call it 8.1. And then just add as many in-betweens as you think the movement needs. So 8.1 goes right in between these two. And that goes underneath here and back to here. And there we go. Just now that it's all done, put on our binder clip just like that. And now we've got a flipbook that we can show off to our friends. Really fun way to learn animation, and it's how I got started in animation. Alright, so here's something cool I wanted to show you. Here's all of my old flipbooks from when I was a kid. This isn't even all of them. Like I told you, I sold a bunch as a kid, so I don't even have all of them. But you can see they're built exactly the same way, and these are done on the back of my mom's business cards. So this one's called Pop Goes the Weasel. Oh, it's all rusty. It's so old. So you can see a theme that I like to do. I like to have things explode, even still. So I would have been in 5th grade when I made these. So I would have been about 10 years old, and these were about 1996 when I would have made these. Cat pet. Cat attacks a guy. They get into a scuffle. Cat's all happy. So Desert Storm was a thing when I was a kid, so I drew an animation of Saddam Hussein doing a little tap dance. Then a nuke falls on his head and he explodes. I love that he does the little wink when he grabs the cane. I love that when the bomb comes down, his hat's still on it. It's very funny. There's so many of these. I remember this. Jurassic Park had just come out. I was so proud of that dinosaur. Dude comes out, he's on the toilet. Oh no, he gets eaten. I like how he disappears when he gets eaten. I was just like, I'm not drawing him again. That's so funny. Brutal boxing. Oh, his teeth are falling out. Oh, then an uppercut and his head comes off. It's so funny. Oh my gosh. Oh. Alright, this one's called Don't Drink and Drive. Big advocate. Oh, look at that guy drinking his beer. Oh, and he crashes into the car. But other car's fine, so that's okay. Skateboard fun. Or not. Oh, it starts out as Tony Hawk from a skateboard magazine. And then I try to animate it the same thing, but he falls over. Oh, and it gets crushed by the car. Oh, no. Oh. I think this was the very first one that I made. I think this was the very first flipbook that I ever made. It just starts out as a dot. You can tell I hadn't figured out that I needed to draw on the right side because it's all in the middle. It might be a little bit hard to see, but dude gets assembled just like that. Another classic. What goes up must come down and go boom. Got a plane. Dude falls out of it. Falls onto a trampoline. Oh, he goes over and explodes. Bombs away again. Dude comes over, drops off a landmine in the toilet, marches off. Dude comes in, sits on the toilet. Kaboom! Oh, he's all blood and guts and gore. What is this? The first human? Oh, it's an amoeba. Turns into a dinosaur. Turns into a man. Oh, good drawing. I think that's all my old ones. Here's one that I did in more modern times. This is probably like shortly after school. Did it on some bigger paper. That actually works pretty well. Little double bounce walk cycle. So yeah, that's flipbooks. I hope you enjoyed learning how to make them. They're one of my favorite ways to do animation. I had a lot of fun making this, and I hope you had fun learning. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, give it a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe for more animation-related videos. If you'd like to learn more about animation, I also have an animation course down in the video description below, so make sure to check that out. Anyways, thanks again, you guys. Hope you all have a good one. Take it easy, happy animating, and until next time, bye-bye! Be sure to click here to subscribe to my channel to stay updated on future videos and tutorials. If you'd like to help support my work, you can click here to visit my Patreon page. You also get access to rewards like early access to tutorials, source animation files, and access to a secret Patreon-only chat room. Keep on animating, and until next time, bye-bye!